Welcome back to another episode of Building Up Your Business, the podcast. My name is Erica Dill. I am your host with Operationally Up. Remember, Operationally Up is here to help your consumer goods and e-commerce business grow and build for scalability to maximize those profits. Building Up Your Business is a fantastic podcast where we're here to help you, the business owner and entrepreneur. So remember, from bombs to order fulfillment, marketing to taxes, learn the stuff from the pros before you step in it. Our pro today is Karen Colligan, founder of PeopleThink. Karen, thank you so much for having us today.
Oh, thanks so much, Erica. I can't wait to talk about leadership and participate in your podcast, so thank you.
I'm thrilled. With a background in talent development, focusing on how to attract, develop, and retain talent, her work has always been about helping people get from where they are to where they want to go. Her passion led her focus on leaders, helping new and emerging leaders to hone their skills. Now, PeopleThink is celebrating its 25th year in business. Woohoo! Congratulations on that. And as the founder, she could not be better suited to help us talk about our topic today, which is doubling down, recasting the business owner as a leader. I am so thrilled to talk about this topic because so many times entrepreneurs and leaders get into business because they're passionate about their product, their service. They're really good at it, but sometimes they need to hone those leadership skills, which actually drives me into my first question. There are so many great leaders that take work and practice and hone their skills. And although some of us are born with natural leadership skills, I say us because I like to think that I have natural leadership skills. But even those of us, what?
I said, but of course.
So even those of us who, quote unquote, have natural skills, we like to think about working hard to hone those skills. So Karen, tell us, why is it so important for leaders to continue to work on these leadership skills?
Well, you kind of said a little bit about it in the beginning, Erica. You know, people begin and start their businesses because they love what they do. They know that they can have an impact, and they want to make the world a better place. I mean, that's normally why people start a business. What happens is they get so ingrained in that part that they forget about stepping back and thinking about who they are as a leader, because leadership really sets the tone of the organization. So what you have to really think about is, okay, if I'm going to run this business, then what do I have to do first? I have to look at myself. So I look at it in a couple different places. You have to have self-awareness. So you have to know what you're great at. You have to know what you suck at. And you have to know how to build teams that you can put around you that are smarter than you are in their expertise. So it's that whole self-awareness thing. And then what you have to think about is, okay, what do I have to develop? Because all of us have to develop, Eric. It doesn't matter what we do for a living. We have to develop. And then we're going to grow, and then we're going to repeat. So from a leadership perspective, the business owner, the managing director, the vice president has to step back and say, before anybody's going to follow me, I have to know who I am, and I have to be able to articulate that very clearly, very concisely, so people want to follow me.
I love that, and I think that kind of goes very next into my next question. We're starting off this strong and leading into things. Everybody right now is talking about workplace culture, you know, when we're talking about retention and how that really drives an employee's experience within a company. How does a leader and their style really play into the culture of the company?
Yeah, well, it's complete, is what I will say. So when I think about leadership, Erica, I think about stuff runs downhill. And so the leader sets the tone. And the culture is basically the personality of an organization. So what I want to know when a leader is setting that cultural tone is, what do people do when nobody's looking? That's culture. And so it's about values, it's about behaviors, it's about beliefs. And when a leader is crystal clear about what they are and crystal clear about the culture they want to set, then they can hire to that culture, they can fire against that culture, and more importantly, they're going to find the people who want to stay because they believe in those values, in those beliefs, and those behaviors. And so the idea is, when nobody's looking, they're going to do the right thing because they're in the right place and they know that their leader will have their back.
They're naturally driven internally because they match that culture.
Absolutely.
And, you know, one of my biggest soapboxes is about how the culture and the right fit of the person is more important than that person's skills. I'm not saying that that employee can't have any skills in the role that they're doing, but having that good fit really nurtures them to being that good team member. And it really does, like you said, it rolls downhill. It starts with that great leader. And if that leader can set the tone to what they want those team members to be, it has a huge impact. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And I used to be a recruiter a million years ago, and what I used to recruit to was competency and culture. So once you have the competency, it's a flat line. I would interview people who were brilliant, flat line. Okay, you're brilliant, I'm brilliant, that's great. If you're not going to fit into the culture of the organization, what difference does it make? Because you're going to leave in 6 to 9 months. So for me, culture is as important as competency. Train the attitude. Right. Hire for skills, train the attitude is really the way I look at it. Yes.
Yeah. And as a strong leader, they are going to be the ones that really set that tone, because in these companies, especially these startups, which is, you know, who a lot of our listeners are, they're at the beginning stage of setting and defining what that culture is. And that culture is really tied to who they are. Just like we saying that these employees join the company because of who they are, that culture really comes internally from that leader. So if that leader doesn't have strong enough leadership skills to really connect with that culture, or if that culture is somewhat disconnected, they're going to really struggle to instill those core values.
And people stay in an organization because of the intrinsic components. So what, I mean, I've seen we all have, every statistic about why people leave and bloody, blah. At the end of the day, people join an organization because of the values, and people leave an organization because of the values. Hands down, you can tell me anything you want, you can give me any statistic you want. When you interview and talk to people outside the exit interview, hands down, it's because there's not a match to the values. So stuff runs downhill, and if the leader is not living the values, then that person will eventually leave the organization.
And that leads in perfectly to what we're talking about today. And we're saying that leaders are the ones that set that tone, that set those values. And what you are saying to our listeners about doubling down is that these leaders really need to know who they are, and that's what starts at being a good leader. And I'm assuming that all has to do with strengths and weaknesses, as you kind of said earlier. So tell us about the importance of knowing who we are and how that really affects us as leaders.
Yeah. Well, so what happens, again, everybody's watching a leader. So, you know, when I think about leadership, I think about 5 aspects of leadership. I think about, you have to set the vision, you know, where are we going? And, you know, let my imagination run wild with you. Then it's the culture. Then number 3 is strategy. And then inspire me, number 4, like, why should I stay? And then number 5 is the head, like, give me some IQ, and then my heart, head and heart. It's, you know, the EQ. And so those 5 elements are really important. If a leader is not clear about what those elements are, what happens, Erica, is they change their mind every day. And so when it comes to decision making, the easy, no problem. But when there's complex decisions that have to be made, and the people that are working for you are not clear about what the vision is, what the strategy, how we're going to get there, then what happens is it waffles from day to day. And then people get confused. There's a little bit of chaos going on. And then, well, how do I fit into this organization? How do my goals align with this? They've just changed them. So the importance of a leader knowing who they are is so the rest of the organization can be calm and can do the work instead of monitoring where is he or she going to be today when we come into the office.
And that does create such a level of uncertainty for team members. I know we've all, come across those leaders that struggle to kind of keep on that path. And I think we can all agree that really does affect that culture and those team members. Yeah. So if we say that leadership is about, all starts with knowing who we are, creating that stability, creating that consistency, how the heck do we know and figure out who we are?
Yeah. Well, it just so happens PeopleThink has a program called Keep It Real Leadership, where we actually look at, we build a whole profile, Erica, and it's about your competencies which you're great at, the ones that you need to develop. But what are your internal barriers? What has stopped you before? Because it's the same thing that's going to stop you again. And then what are some accomplishments that you had, and what competencies did you use? Because when we use our natural talents, voila, we are so darn smart. And then I do an assessment. I use an assessment tool called Luminous Spark, and it measures 24 qualities. So you get really deep into who am I, and then where do I need to stretch. So we've got, and that's an online tool, 144 questions. So they're really diving in. So you collect all this information, and then you say, okay, where am I today, and more importantly, where do I have to go with my business? Where do I have to grow with my business? Who do I have to hire who are smarter than me in areas that I might be weak in? And then, as I said, self-awareness, develop, grow, repeat, and it just has to continue. And the self-awareness piece for me is, I said it, and I'll say it 1,000 times. You have to continually look at yourself again and again to say, maybe I've shifted, maybe I've grown, maybe I really did learn something. And so there's so many ways to determine. You can do 360 leadership assessments where people assess you and what you are.
I love those.
Yeah, and those are good. Well, you love them until you're getting the feedback. Then you're like, whoa, that's not me. However, they're really helpful. So there's all kinds of tools. However, the most important element about a leader is that they are willing to step in to what they're great at, step into what they're not great at, and then figure it out from there. And you have to have strength to do that because you're not great at everything. We're all smart. And at the end of the day, we all have development areas.
Oh my gosh, I have so many questions and points that I want to follow up that, but I want to start with the big one. What was that resource that you said that has a test that people can take online?
It's an assessment. It's called Lumina Learning. They're out of the UK, and the assessment is Luminous Spark. It measures 24 qualities. You can't just take it. You have to have somebody who has been accredited in it in order to give you the really deep methodology behind it so that you use it and you don't. This is really about expanding who you are instead of contracting. So it's about you being more than, instead of I am this and I am that. No, we're really a continuum of a lot of things. So, yes.
That's great. I love when we can provide resources for our listeners. The other thing that you mentioned is self-awareness. And I think that can be, like you said, I love the 360 interviews or reviews because I think that is a great tool for people to look at who, and for those people who don't know what a 360 is, if you're doing it on a leader, you talk to people who report to that person, who are peers of that person, and who manage that person. And that's where the 360 comes down, just in case people aren't aware of that. I think it's such a great tool for people to use, but it can be so intimidating. What do you tell people who are potentially going through that on the first time about the feedback they're going to get? What types of soothing words or words of wisdom can you actually give people?
Yeah. So I use a 360 that gives qualitative. You ask for numbers, and then you also give a quantitative, and then also qualitative where people can write things. So that, because your 7 might be different than my 7, or your 10 might be different than my 10. So, however, we need a measuring component. So that's that piece. So when we're going into this, what I make sure is that each of the people that I'm working with don't pick their favorite people. I ask them that they review the list with their leader so that they're going to really get a good, well-rounded 360. And that this information, it sounds crazy, is a gift. And I can't tell you how many people have done 360s and later on go, that really was a gift. It didn't feel like a gift at the time. But what I do is I measure them in the beginning and then at the end of our coaching process, so that we can see where where they've had success and where they still might need to work. And when you start to see how you really have grown and how people have shifted differently about how they're viewing your skill sets, all of a sudden it's like, this wasn't so bad. And at first, you're right, Erica. It can be hard. It can be hard. Yes.
Nobody wants to hear about the things. I'm not going to say the bad things. I'm going to say the things that we need work on. Nobody wants to hear about that. They just, especially because if you're in a work environment, you don't want your boss to know about what your weaknesses are. But spoiler alert, they probably already know. Any good leader probably already knows what your weaknesses are, and that's okay because there's room to grow. Or maybe, like you said, double down on what you're good on, and lead from a point of strength. And that's why I always, whenever I've done 360s with team members, I always try to tell them, look, I've done 360s. I get feedback back that I'm not necessarily proud of, but I have grown from each and every one of them. I'm human. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. And that's okay. And so when I have, my direct reports that I'm doing 360s on, I try to tell them, look, you're going to be able to give me feedback and do my 360. So we're all in this boat together. We're all going to learn together. And I'm right here to support you along the way. And I feel, while it still may not take all of the tension out of the situation, I think it does put them at ease to have that human conversation and be like, yeah, you're going to get some feedback you're not thrilled about, but don't worry, I'm in the same boat as you, and you'll be able to do a 360 on me. So, I'm going to be in the same situation, and that tends to soften the blow.
Yeah, it softens it, Erica, and then they recognize that you also are human and that you also have had these 360s. 360s, I've been in corporate for a long time. Of course, I've had them, and I've learned from them. Let's put it that way. We all have learned from them.
we all have learned. And I have yet to have a 360 where it just went catastrophically wrong. Yeah. Most of the time, people filling them out are not being mean. They're there to help, and it's all a good process. I have yet to see one be a complete train wreck. That's the other thing I tell people is it's not going to be a train wreck, I promise.
No, most people have the best intent. They want you to be successful. They want you to do well. And that's why, having your list really be vetted with your leader to make sure that you're not stacking it either way is really helpful. And from a statistical perspective, there's going to be outliers on both sides. We always like the outliers that love us. However, that's not always going to happen.
Absolutely. So I love this concept of doubling down on knowing who we are and knowing how to be, so that we can use that on how to be good leaders. Mm-hmm. So what is, we always like to give our listeners, tidbits that they can start and do tomorrow and implement right away. So what's one non-negotiable habit or practice that you would recommend for our listeners to start tomorrow and double down on being impactful leaders?
Yeah, so to go back to the self-awareness, double down, no, like non-negotiable is all about the values. If you do not know your values, you're not a leader. You have got to be able to understand them because they are your guiding light. They're going to help you make decisions, the easy ones and the complex ones. There's a million things out on the internet. If people want to go out and say, oh, I can't think of the values, we have a tool that you go, we give you about 60, and then you go to 15, and then you go to 5. And at the end of the day, if you can't articulate those, why would anybody follow you? Because again, you're going to potentially waffle, and you don't want that to happen.
You know, and that's funny that you bring that up because I went through a very similar exercise a while back, and it is a labor of love because you start with such a large list and you start whittling it down. And I remember getting down to about 8 and they were like, nope, sorry, you need to get down to 3 or 4. And I'm like, how does one even go about doing this? And it took some intense soul searching to really understand what those 3 to 4 are. I wish they had told me 5 because I think I could have gotten it down to 5.
Yeah.
But man, that is just an intense exercise, and it's not to be, I encourage everyone to do it. And it's not to be taken lightly. It's really meant to test you and to get you to understand what those are. So I encourage everybody to do it because you'll really learn about yourself. And the other thing that I wanted to mention too about doing that is somebody in the group that we were doing it with, it was like a multi-stage process, and that was one of the very first things. A couple weeks later, somebody came back and said, hey, so like I got my core values, I posted them on my wall so that I saw them every day so that I feel disconnected to one of them. And one of the things that they said was, go back to your list of 8 to 10 and find another one that does fit in. So can these values really, are you locked into these values right off the bat, or can you try them on until you find something that resonates?
I think that trying them on is important. Now, there's certain values that are non-negotiable for us. So one of my values is integrity. I mean, it's non-negotiable. It's just non-negotiable.
I don't know. Integrity doesn't resonate with me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But depending on where you are in your career, depending where you are in your life, values will shift. Again, there'll be certain values that are just hands down non-negotiable, but there's other things that might potentially shift, which is why I think it's so important for people to do values exercises on a regular basis, just to check in. And if you have one value or 2 values that you're like, oh, that's not resonating with me right now. Okay, good news, because why do you want to continue to live your life on 2 values that don't really resonate with you? Redo it. It's an exercise that is it's a labor of love, as you said, and it's important for you to continue to check. It's like a check and balances. Make sure that you're on point. Yeah.
But it's a double-edged knife, because what I do want to say in regards to that is, yes, you can, if you do the values, what would you say? How often should somebody do the values? Every couple of years?
Yeah, I'd say every couple of years, unless they have a big job change. Unless, like, if I'm working in an organization and then all of a sudden I'm going to start my own business, I better do it. But if I'm doing in a business, I'd say, and I'm on a roll and it feels good and it feels right, every 2 years is perfect.
So the thing that I want to caution people about is for those leaders that maybe do have, some waffling going on in their world. This is not an exercise that you do once a week. This is not an exercise that you do every month to try to rechange your values. The purpose is to pick values and stick with them for at least 2 years. Yeah. So do not get the list and then say, well, it doesn't resonate, I'm going to change it this week. Or, oh, this doesn't resonate anymore, I'm going to change it this week. Because that's probably a sign that you need to spend more time in the beginning to do it than what you did. So, Karen, thank you for specifying that it's a 2-year commitment.
Yeah, and your values are your guiding light. It's how you make the decision. So if people are watching you waffle, then they're going to get confused, and you're going to waffle because you're not clear. So they got to mean something to you. They have to mean something to you. Yes, definitely.
So the other thing that I want to jump into when we talk about doubling down and being a good leader, and we kind of touched on this earlier, but I want to dig into it a little bit more. You know, our leaders, our entrepreneurs, our business owners, they got into business because they love X. They love their service. They want to, I think, as you put it, they want to make a change in the world. But coming from that aspect of why you started a business and moving into actually being the leader of the business, what mindset shifts, say that 5 times fast, are essential for these entrepreneurs to really change to become the leader of the company?
Yeah. So yes. So we get into our business because we love it. And then we think, oh, okay, this is great. And then we start hiring people. And again, if we've done the work, then we're hiring the right people and those kinds of things. What happens is, because we love what we do, we still want to keep our little fingers in everything. Now, what we have to do is get those darn fingers out of it, and we have to bring you back up. And so there's a great book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth Revisited. And it talks all about this exact concept, that people go into business because they love it, and then they're so busy loving it that they're not able to scale it. There's no stability in it. So the concept is to work on your business and not in your business. So in your business is little fingers. On your business is, okay, now I get it. Now I'm really going to be the CEO. I am the founder, I'm the CEO, and I'm going to rise above it, and I am really going to be looking at the continued vision. I'm going to continue to be looking at the culture. I'm going to look at the strategy. I'm going to make sure I'm inspiring, and I'm going to make sure that I have a head and a heart. That's what happens. That's what needs to happen for scale. That's what needs to happen for growth, that for continued growth, that needs to happen for hiring purposes, for retention purposes. So the leader has to get out of the soup. That's what they have to do. Yeah. They have to get out of the soup. And there's so many times, I love the soup, Erica. That's why I'm here. I'm right in the thick of it all. And we have to get out of the soup. So work on it and not in it. And that was coined by Michael Gerber for the E-Myth Revisited. It's a great book, and it's been updated a bunch of times. So I highly recommend. And no matter what you do, whether you're a business owner, whether you're working in corporate America, it still will resonate with you, because you start to understand how important growth is, and you can't grow if you're in the soup.
And one of the other things that I want to touch on, I mean, of course, right now we're talking all about how to transition that entrepreneur really into that leader. But one of the things that I want to mention is that sometimes people can't make that shift. And that's okay. That's where this exploring yourself, knowing your values and everything comes from, because you may discover that you are not the right leader for your business. And maybe you can best serve the business in an R&D role or in a sales role. And I think you'll agree with me. One of the exercises I like to do with business owners is a Venn diagram. Yeah. What are they good at? What do they like to do? And what does the company need? Mm-hmm. And sometimes the intersection is not CEO, president. Yeah. And that is okay. And that's where you need to know yourself and to know, should you hire somebody to be that leader? And then you can go and focus on R&D, or you can go and focus on sales. What are your thoughts along that?
Oh, Erica, yes. And it takes a lot of guts, and it takes a beautiful ego to be able to say to the world, I've created this, I'm not the person to lead it, I want to be involved, and I care enough about this, I'm going to hire the right person to run this business. So maybe you go into ops, like you said, maybe the marketing piece, maybe the R&D piece, and you can sit on the board. And
yeah, absolutely.
You're still smart enough to know what you're great at, what you're not so great at, and if you can't bring this business to the next level. And I worked in San Francisco for a long time, and worked in the Silicon Valley a lot, and you still saw it time after time. The founders would not get out of the way. And because they could not get out of the way, their businesses did not do well and did not succeed.
It's a shame.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I talk ego like that, I mean ego in a way that you understand your brilliance and you understand your not so brilliant stuff, and you have enough guts to step into that. And that's a beautiful ego, if you ask me.
Well, and I would say there's even aspects of that where you can really feed your ego, because if you understand what your strengths are, your strength is product development, your strength is you can sell the crap out of your product. Mm-hmm. Well, great. Go hardcore, go double down, go be like, I am going to sell the crap out of this business and bring us in so much business. Mm-hmm. And that is where I shine.
Yeah.
And nobody wants their weaknesses to be pointed out. So if you, as an entrepreneur and a leader and a business owner, you want to say, I want to be pat on the back because I want to be good at what I do. This is the best way for some people to go and be good at what they do and to not have to worry about the stuff that they don't like, don't want to do, or maybe aren't good at. Nobody wants to have those flaws pointed out. Well, then just let that all go and be like, I am going to go do what makes me brilliant. So it's a way, if you phrase it like that, it's a way to pet your ego more.
Oh, absolutely. And, when we do what we're naturally good at, our natural talents, we'll excel. It's like, and the way I explain natural talents is, if someone said to me, I'm going to give you like $10 million, and I couldn't take it because I couldn't not do this thing. When you can find your natural talents, and that's a perfect example, then I'm going to go sell the crap out of this, and I want somebody else to run the business because I don't care about the operations piece. I care about it deeply. I don't want to do it. Voila, you have a huge success story.
I love that. Karen, this has been so insightful. There are so many nuggets of information. I love the resources that you provided for everybody, because I think this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. Obviously, it's kind of what I do for a living, so it's very important to me. So I'm so glad that you were able to impart a lot of this knowledge onto our listeners.
Yeah, I loved it, Erica. We could have kept going and going and going and chat. So thank you for. It's wonderful to have a conversation about this with people who care about it. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you again for joining us on another episode of Building Up Your Business, the podcast. Operationally Up is here to help your business scale. It's here to manage that operations when you don't want to anymore, and that's okay. Building Up Your Business is a podcast specially made for you, where you can learn all of those tips and tricks from the pros and learn them the best way possible without having to go and do the research yourself. So remember, from bombs to order fulfillment, marketing and taxes, learn the stuff from the pros before you step in it. Thank you again. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. And until then, have a fantastic day. Bye.